We're going to start by taking a look at a typical leaf and look at both the internal and external anatomy of that leaf. And if we look at a typical leaf here, it has a stem, and we're going to look at this in cross section. So we're going to take a look at the inside of the leaf and see what it looks like. Might be a leaf from my apple tree, and it has some veins in here, and we're just going to look at this part right in here. So we're going to take a enlarged view, so to speak, of just a chunk of this leaf and see what it looks like, microscopically of course, and get a better picture of what that internal anatomy of the leaf is all about. Let's find the page turner thing here. Alright. So when we look at that internal anatomy, the first thing we notice is that there is an outer layer of cells, and those cells are cuboidal. That means they're square, or if you look at them in a three-dimensional shape, they're blocks of cells, and each one has a nucleus, of course, and those cells, and this, by the way, is that square we were looking at. On the previous page. These cells are called the epidermal cells, or epidermis. Epidermis. That's the outer layer of cells. And on that outer layer, on the outside of it, is a waxy coating on the outside of the leaf. And every leaf just about has this outer waxy coating. And that waxy coating has a scientific name too, of course. It's called the cuticle. Cuticle. And that's the waxy coating. And the function of that waxy coating is to prevent water loss, is the main job of that. And you can imagine that in warm climates, where it's really hot, that waxy coating is going to be thick. And in cooler, more wet climates, temperate climates, that waxy coating is going to be a lot less thick. Just because in the warm climate you want to prevent as much water loss from the leaf as possible. Well, below that outer epidermal layer is a layer of cells that are tall and rectangular. Tall and rectangular. And these tall rectangular cells, their main identifying characteristic is that they have a lot of chloroplasts. All inside of them there's tons and tons of chloroplasts. Well, this outer next layer right here, this tall rectangular layer, is called, these cells are called palisade parenchyma cells. That's one of the cool words in science. Palisade parenchyma. In goofy science voice. So, palisade parenchyma cells, because they have lots of chloroplasts, you can probably guess their function. They are the main area where photosynthesis takes place. Okay. And those cells are, again, rectangular and very distinct. We're going to look, this is the central vein of the leaf. We're going to look at that in a minute. But the next thing we want to look at are these cells that are in the main part of the leaf here. And they're spread out like this, all over. And this area of the leaf, the main area of the leaf, that's called the, let me underline this vocabulary word, palisade parenchyma. That area, the main area of the leaf, is called the mesophyll. Whoops, no E there. The mesophyll is the area where these cells are here, and these cells right here that are all spread out are called spongy parenchyma cells. Spongy parenchyma cells. And the spongy parenchyma cells, their function is for gas exchange. So carbon dioxide gets converted into oxygen. That's where that chemical reaction happens. This lower layer of leaves or cells here, down here at the bottom, is another layer of epidermal cells. And we'll call this epidermis. But it's on the lower surface of the leaf. Epidermis. So this is lower, underneath the leaf, and this is upper, above the leaf. Now, spread out on the lower surface of the leaf are some specialized cells that are super important. And I'll talk about these now. They look like this. They're thick, and we're going to look at these in the lab. These cells right here, there's two of them. There's one cell here and two here. So they're right next to each other. Those cells are called guard cells. guard cells. And if we look at the guard cells, they're super important. They look like this. They always are in pairs. When they are lacking in water, when water goes out, they're closed. When water goes into these cells, however, and water goes in because they have chloroplasts in them, and they make sugars. When they make sugar, the cell wants to take in water, and that has to do with osmosis, and we'll get to that later, how come making sugar makes water go into them. But when water goes into them, these cells, these two guard cells, open up. So when water goes in, we're going to put H2O here, they open. And that opening is called a stomata. Stomata. We've talked about that before. Stomata. S-T-O-M-A-T-A. And when the stomata are open, CO2 goes in, and oxygen goes out. And that usually happens during the day. So they're open in the day when they're doing photosynthesis, and they're closed at night. So water escapes from them at nighttime because they're not doing photosynthesis, and they close up. They're not producing sugars. During the day, photosynthesis starts happening because there's chloroplasts in here. They produce sugars, and the high concentration of sugars allows water to go in. When water comes in, the guard cells poof up, and the opening opens up. The stoma opens up. And that's pretty much how a leaf works. There's a couple other things that I haven't mentioned, and that's right here in the middle. There are two tissues. Xylem is this part right here, and phloem is this part. And you can think of xylem and phloem as arteries and veins. Xylem goes up from the roots, and it brings water and minerals up into the plant. Water and minerals. Phloem goes down, so xylem up, phloem down. Xylem goes down, and it transports nutrients or sugars from photosynthesis down to the rest of the plant from the leaf. And that's pretty much how the leaf works. All right, let's take a look at coloring now.